It was just after sunrise when the call came in. I was still finishing my tea at the small wildlife outpost when one of the local trackers arrived, breathing heavily. He had cycled nearly 5 kilometers to reach us. He said a rhinoceros was in trouble near the old riverbed. At first I assumed it might be injured or stuck in mud. That's usually what we deal with. But he kept repeating one word, bees. It sounded unusual, almost unlikely. Still, the urgency in his voice was enough. Within minutes, I gathered my kit, informed 2 others, and we prepared to leave. The area he mentioned was not easy to reach. We drove as far as the dirt track allowed, then continued on foot. The sun was already getting harsh, and the ground was dry and uneven. As we walked, the tracker explained what he had seen. A rhino standing near a large tree, moving restlessly, with a dark cloud around its head. He hadn't gone close, but the constant buzzing made it clear. I had dealt with bee swarms before, but never with a rhinoceros involved. The thought made me uneasy. We heard the buzzing before we saw anything. It was a steady, thick sound, not like the occasional bees you notice near flowers. This was louder, almost like a machine humming. Then we saw the rhino. It was a large adult, standing near a tree with a broken branch hanging from it. Above that branch I could see part of a beehive. The rhino must have brushed against the tree and disturbed it. Now thousands of bees were circling its head, especially around its eyes and ears. The animal was clearly distressed. It kept shaking its head, snorting, and taking short, restless steps. Every time it tried to move away, the swarm followed. Its thick skin protected most of its body, but the sensitive areas, eyes, nostrils, inside the ears, were vulnerable. That's where the bees concentrated. I noticed swelling around its eyes already. It was not panicking wildly, but it was trapped in a kind of constant irritation and pain that it couldn't escape. We stopped at a safe distance and discussed our options. We couldn't approach directly. A charging rhino is dangerous even in normal conditions, and this one was already agitated. On top of that, the bees would attack us too. We didn't have specialized protective gear with us, just basic field equipment. One of my colleagues suggested using smoke, the same method used by beekeepers. It made sense. Smoke can calm bees or drive them away without harming them. We spread out to collect dry branches, leaves, and anything that could burn slowly. The ground was littered with dry grass, which helped. We built small piles at a distance, making sure not to get too close to the rhino. Lighting the fires took a few tries because the wind kept shifting. When the flames finally caught, we added green leaves to produce thicker smoke. The smell was strong, but that was what we needed. At first, the smoke drifted away from the rhino, carried by a slight breeze. We adjusted our position, lighting another small fire on the opposite side. Slowly, the smoke began to move in the right direction. The bees didn't disperse immediately, but their movement changed. The tight swarm loosened slightly. The rhino paused for a moment, lifting its head, as if noticing the change in the air. We decided to get a bit closer, carefully. I wrapped a cloth around my face and picked up a smoking branch. Another team member did the same. We moved slowly, watching the rhino's behavior. It turned slightly in our direction, but didn't charge. I think the constant irritation from the bees was occupying most of its attention. We waved the smoking branches gently, letting the smoke drift toward its head. The buzzing grew louder as we approached. A few bees came toward us, and I felt one sting on my wrist. It was sharp but manageable. We kept our movements steady, avoiding sudden gestures. Gradually, the smoke started to take effect. The bees began to rise higher, no longer clustering tightly around the rhino's face. Small gaps appeared in the swarm. It wasn't a complete change, but it was enough to notice. The rhino seemed to sense the difference. It stopped shaking its head as much and stood still for a few seconds. Then it took a step forward, away from the tree. The bees followed, but not as densely as before. We continued guiding the smoke in its direction, creating a kind of moving barrier behind it. The idea was not to force it, but to encourage it to move away from the hive. For the next 15 minutes we worked steadily. One person kept the fires going, while the rest of us directed the smoke. The rhino moved slowly, stopping often. Each time it paused, the bees tried to regroup. That was our signal to increase the smoke again. It required patience. There was no quick solution, just careful, repeated effort. Slowly, the distance between the rhino and the original tree increased. Eventually, the swarm thinned out significantly. Only a few bees remained around the rhino. It walked toward a more open area, away from dense trees. Its movements became less tense. I noticed it lowering its head and breathing more evenly. The swelling around its eyes was still visible, but it no longer looked overwhelmed. For the first time, it seemed aware of its surroundings rather than just reacting to pain. We kept our distance and watched. The rhino stopped near a patch of dry mud and began rubbing its side against a small mound. Then it scooped up some dust with its horn and tossed it over its back. It's a normal behavior, something rhinos do to protect their skin. Seeing that gave me relief. It meant the animal was returning to its usual habits, not just reacting to the swarm. We decided not to follow any further. Intervening more could have stressed it again. We marked the location and informed the forest team so they could monitor the rhino over the next few days. Before leaving, we made sure all fires were properly extinguished. The area was dry, and even a small spark could cause damage. As we walked back, the sound of buzzing had faded completely. Later that evening, we received word that the rhino had been seen near a water source, calm and moving normally. It likely went there to drink and cool itself. Hearing that was enough for me. It wasn't a dramatic rescue, and we didn't physically touch or treat the animal. We simply helped remove the immediate problem. Sometimes that's all that's needed, just enough support to let the animal find its own way back to safety.